Hi, boys and girls. This is Ms. Kathy. I'm so happy you've joined me today for another story just for you. Today's story is Chapter 5, Lookout Peak. Knock, knock, Willie said to Chris as Chris pushed his bicycle beside Willie's wheelchair. Who's there? Chris responded. John. John who? Chris asked. John the Baptist, Sammy answered, running up behind Chris and dumping his bottle of water over Chris's head. Why, you, Chris said, spluttering. The girls and Ryan laughed. Chris let go of his bike and ran after Sammy. Within seconds, everyone, including Chris, was laughing. By the time they reached the top of Lookout Peak, Chris was glad the water on his head had cooled him off. It was getting warmer and warmer. He was the first up the hill and the first to find a cold drinking fountain. Ryan went to sit on the lawn area overlooking Mill Valley and motioned for Chris to join him. In a minute, Chris said, and wandered over to where Sammy and Willie were getting a drink at the fountain. Sammy looked up from the fountain and grinned. He scooped up a handful of water and threw it at Chris. John the Baptist, he said, laughing. Enough. Guys, I want to ask you something serious. Ooh, he wants to get serious. That's different, Willie said. Tell me what it's like to get baptized, Chris asked. What's there to tell, Willie asked. You hold onto the pastor's arm and he dunks you under the water. No problem, unless you're afraid of water. I mean, Chris said, how do you feel inside? Like I said yesterday, I wanted to be baptized and be a part of the church, Sammy said. I guess being baptized means different things to different people. Sammy's right, Willie said. I don't think I understood all about it when it happened, but when I think about it now, I feel good inside. Hey, water baby, over here, Ryan shouted to Chris. Don't listen to him, Chris, Sammy said. He doesn't know anything. Just figure it out for yourself, Chris, Willie said. It's just between you and Jesus. Chris looked at Willie and Sammy, then over at Ryan. He looked as if he were trying to make up his mind. Finally, he left Willie and Sammy to join Ryan. Cars began arriving a few minutes later. Mrs. Vargas soon chugged up the hill in her car, too. Come on, Chris, Ryan, Maria, she shouted. I have lunch for you. Chris bolted through his peanut butter and jelly sandwich and apple so quickly he barely tasted it. Within a few minutes, he was standing on the concrete lookout behind the fence. Maria joined him in a few minutes, dropping a quarter into a slot by a telescope. They took turns using the machine to look all over Mill Valley. There's our house, Maria cried, and let Chris look through the telescope to see their house far below them. We're supposed to be finding the 2 crows, Ryan said. Well, I looked up and down the river. I didn't see anything that looked like 2 crows, or even 1 crow. Well, that's the end of our treasure hunt, Jenny said. Here, you guys, did you see this? Willie said behind them. Chris and the others turned to see Willie looking at a series of photographs displayed on the wall behind them. What? They're just pictures, Ryan said. Look, Willie said, remember what Mrs. Shue said about geography changing? The Mill Valley flood of 1911, Chris read. Funny, I don't remember that, Sammy said. Probably because it happened before your grandfather was born, Willie said. But I don't think a flood could move boulders or a hill, could it? Ryan asked. Maybe not, but it could move a river. Willie pointed to a photo that showed Mill Valley. The white line shows where the river flows today through the west part of town. This dotted line shows where it flowed before 1911, through the east part of town. Look at that, Maria breathed. The flood was caused by a landslide just below us. That made the river change its route. And flooded out hundreds of people in the meantime, Willie said. We've been looking on the wrong side of town, Chris said excitedly. Without saying another word, 7 heads turned toward Mill Valley. The map showed them a wide brown stretch to the east of town that was the riverbed. They looked below them. They expected to find something that looked like an old river. All they saw, stretching from Lookout Peak to the mall where they started, were streets and houses. Nothing, Chris muttered to himself as he helped his mother load his bicycle into the trunk of the car a little later. All our miles, all our looking, for nothing. He pulled the door to the back seat open and threw himself down on the seat. Well, Mrs. Vargas said, there's always serendipity. Sarah, who? Ryan asked. Mrs. Vargas laughed. Serendipity. It means good things happen to you when you don't expect them. Kind of like getting a blessing from God that you didn't ask for, Maria asked. Something like that, Mrs. Vargas said. You know, so many good things happen to us every day. Most people don't take time to be grateful for them. Good things? Ryan asked. Like what? Like the weather, for instance, Mrs. Vargas said. What would have happened if it was still raining today? Did you think to ask God for good weather? Did you thank Him for it? The three kids were silent for a long moment. Some things just happen, Ryan said finally. And some things don't, Mrs. Vargas said. Like I said, serendipity. As they headed toward home, Chris's mind tumbled. Everyone else seems so sure of themselves. Sammy and Willie are sure that baptism is a good thing. Ryan is sure that it's dumb. I'm not sure of anything. I pray, but Jesus doesn't really feel like my friend. How can I stand up and be baptized when there are so many things I don't understand? The treasure in Mill Valley would have to wait. His baptism would wait, too.
The story you have heard today is a chapter of the Shoebox Kids, Book 1, The Mysterious Treasure Map. It was written by Jerry D. Thomas and used with permission from the Pacific Press Publishing Association. If you're interested in any other books published by the Seventh-day Adventist Church, please visit AdventistBookCenter.com or call 1-800-765-6955.
This podcast is a production of the Carolina Conference of the Seventh-day Adventist Church.